Welcome everyone to Black Girl Joy. Today we have a very special guest and we are talking about growing. Growing, not going, but growing through adversity. So before we get started, I just want to tell you Merriam-Webster says adversity is a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. And I think the key words is state an instance for continued difficulty and misfortune. So before we begin, go ahead right now as I bring in our special guest, like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when we're on. Do it right now. All right. So I'm going to bring in our special guest. I have a question for the audience while he comes in. How do you react and respond to adversity? What is your initial reaction to adversity? Is it fear? Is it anger? What is your first reaction when it comes to adversity? All right, I'm welcoming tonight Greg Graham. He's returning to the show for the second time. And I'm going to bring him in right now. So, everyone, please welcome Greg Graham.
Hey,
Hey, Greg.
how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. So, I brought Greg on for a very specific reason. When I speak of adversity, Greg is a person who I know personally has gone through extreme adversity and has come out on the other side like strong, helping others, giving back to his community. And that's hard to do when you face something so hard personally, right? And so, Greg, can you just tell us a little bit about your story of adversity?
Well, Joy, my adversity was in the form of a aneurysm or AVM, arteriovenous malformation. When I was 41 years old, I had a hemorrhage in my brain that caused a stroke. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that I had an aneurysm or AVM in my brain. I was conceived with it. When this happened to me, everything fell apart within my life, my marriage, my ability to work, my houses, ability to see my daughters each and every day. And it has disabilities that are invisible as well, such as my balances. I can't balance properly and articulate. Sometimes I can't articulate words, and also I have difficult time focusing.
Okay. All right. So that is extreme adversity, is what I would consider that. What what gave you the strength to even try to go through the adversity? Where does it start?
You just have to stop listening to the outside world and believe in yourself.
Mhm.
Once you find out what depression is all about, and a lot of times people say when you're depressed, stop being depressed, get out of it. Well, there's actual a science to it, that there's chemical imbalance. So you find out what those triggers are, and once you find out what those triggers are, then you start to avoid those triggers when they come up, and that helps you move forward. So for me, my triggers were when people yell at me or people was dissatisfied with what I was doing, I will go into a dark spiral. And once I understood that trigger, I understood I could bypass that dark spiral. Even though I would be still depressed, I understood I could bypass that dark spiral by doing more conscious and more healthy things.
So before you got there, as you're going through the adversity, I always say, kind of like you're saying, like when you're depressed, when you're down, I'm not the one that instantly tells you to get over it, right? Because that is a perspective, right? You're down, well, you just got to get over it and move through it. I feel like you have to feel your feelings. You don't stay there, but you go ahead and feel your feelings and work it out. At what point did you move from, oh my gosh, my life has changed, that I'm going to actually, like, what's the point you decided, okay, I'm going to make the most of this and I'm going to move forward and be better for it?
I don't know if I necessarily decided. I just
Hmm.
had great friends. Um, I had this one friend of mine that kept on telling me, whenever I told her my situation, she was like, "Wow, Greg, that's a great story."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it was." Like, but what's the purpose of that story? Why you keep on saying it? And once I found out that I'm just saying this over and over, I'm just reliving those traumas. And then moving forward, I was wow, like 2 or 3 months I'd be in a dark place for no reason. So now I'm like, let me stop saying these stories. Let me see what happens if I don't say these stories and I can move forward. So I'm about to say about 2 years after my stroke, that's when that actually came about. When I kept on hearing this lady kept on telling me, great story, Greg, great story, great story. And I just stopped saying those stories to myself.
That is awesome. So when you think about adversity, part of it is what's physically going around you, right? It is happening to you. Sometimes it's what other people are doing. Sometimes it's natural stuff like you having an aneurysm. Sometimes it's financial. It's a lot of stuff that you can't control. So what I like about what you said is it's almost like, how do I step out of this story? Because we get caught up in our heads of, okay, I went through this. Okay, I went through this. Okay, I went through this. Let me figure out why I went through this. How could I have done it better? What if I would have did this? How would it have been different? What if this person would have did this? And we kind of stay stuck in that moment, and we're living in that moment over and over and re-traumatizing ourselves over and over, and sometimes dreading what's coming ahead, like what if it happens again? But stepping out and saying, okay, I'm gonna stop telling myself that story. I'm gonna move my headspace from where it is right now to somewhere new.
Absolutely. That's what we have to do because someone gave me this great example and said, hey, when you drive in a car, you have the windshield and you have the rearview mirror. The rearview mirror is very small, but the windshield is wide and huge. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's in front of you. You're supposed to only glance in that rearview mirror. But a lot of times, what we do, we stay stuck in that rearview mirror and say, well, "What if this? What if that?" You can't change it. So why do you actually ponder it?
That's so good. So you talk about staying stuck. I think for me, when I face adversity, my initial reaction is panic. It's like an anxiety reaction, right? It's
Mhm.
panic. I think some people like fear, right? Some people may be anger, but either way, those kind of core emotions, which I think probably center around feeling a lack of being out of control, maybe, right? I think that's what it is. I think it's like when you face adversity, it's almost proof that you're not in control because you would have never chose that for yourself, right? So it's
Right.
almost like, wait, especially for people like me who are control freaks. It's almost proof you're out of control. So I react in panic, some react in fear, and we just get stuck there. And it's very hard to move from one place to the other. So what you mentioned, when you mentioned you had a friend who said, "Yep, that's a good story." It is so important to have the right people around you. And we're talking about this in
Absolutely.
2 weeks on the show. It's so important to have the right people around you because honestly, as much as people say don't care about what other people think, it impacts you.
Right.
What do you think about that?
It definitely impacts you. I always say there is three type of people that you have in this world. You have people that understand, you have people that empathize, and people that patronize you.
Mm,
People that understand basically went through the same thing that you went through, so they could actually talk with you. People that empathize are someone that's an intelligent person, and they will take the time out to listen to you. And the people that patronize you will always say or compare it to things in their life. And those are the type of people that you really don't want to have in your corner. You just want to have the first two. So once you are conscious of that, and I think that's the most important thing, we have to be conscious of this because a lot of times we just go off of gut feelings or gut reactions, and that's what actually gets us in trouble or puts us in that downward spiral. Like you was talking about anxiety. I had anxiety too, but I had to realize what's actually causing this anxiety. These are words that I keep on saying to myself, like PTSD, and
mm.
that's when I moved forward. I had to
No,
really
yeah.
realize that.
Yeah, and when you talk about the people, we have to be clear. Like your relationships with people is not determined by time, is not determined by blood, relation. The relationship you have to someone who understands you could be somebody you just met in the grocery store. Like,
Absolutely,
you know what I mean? And the person who patronized you could be the person you've known for 20 years.
those are usually the people that can.
Yeah, and it hurts the most, right?
Yes,
It hurts the most.
yes.
Did you face people who were patronizing?
Do I what people?
Do you experience people who are patronizing you? Like, do you interact like through
Absolutely.
your process?
Absolutely. All the
Really?
time I deal with people, and that's the funny thing, because you will get people that claim that they love you, claim that they understand you, and when push comes to shove, they are dealing with their trauma as well,
Mm-hmm.
and they reflect those traumas onto you. And once you actually try to absorb the trauma to actually soothe them or to comfort them, that's when it gets into you and you get really off centered. So they don't mean to patronize it, they just don't know how to actually cope any other way, so that's what they do. But you have to articulate. If unfortunately for people that have strokes, it's hard for us to articulate, but you have to articulate to these people like, hey, that right there, that's not helping me, it's not helping you, so let's not do that. And if they continue to do that, then you have to just push them aside.
Yeah. And I'll tell a personal story, maybe too personal. You know how I get. I was in a very, very bad relationship, right? One of my traumatizing times. I have about two really traumatizing times in my life, where I would say I strongly faced adversity. And I remember like coming out of that and telling someone who had been my friend for years, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I don't know, years, right? And they were like, well, you were just stupid. And it was, I was like, huh? It was no empathy. There was no understanding. There was no sympathy. And at that moment, I realized, yeah, I need to not invest any more time in this because this isn't helping me grow. And I was on a journey of growth, a lot of self help, a lot of healing going on, and trying to figure out what caused me to get in that situation. Right. And when you're doing all of the work and you're faced with people and their kind of attitudes towards whatever you went through, it can be hard. Like you really do have to be very selective about who you let in your circle and who you give energy to.
Well, I agree with you halfway.
Hmm.
For me, it's not necessarily who I allow into my life, is who I allow into my inner thoughts.
Mm.
My things that I really take very valuable time and effort to build. I don't let those people into that actual circle. I still keep them around because they could be good for something else in the
Yeah,
future. So, but for me to have great conversations with you and let you know how I'm feeling, maybe not.
exactly. Exactly. So when it comes to like friendships and relationships, I do have different categories. So it's like associates, right? And you can have friends. You can have friends that's like really good to go party with. You can have friends that's like really good to hang out with the kids. You can have different categories of friends. You can have friends that you can confide in, or family you can confide in. Family you can have a barbecue with, and and have fun. Like there's different categories, and I think that is okay.
Absolutely. Because I look at it like this. And back in what 2004, 2005, they used to have those bracelets say, "What would Jesus do?" And
Mhm.
I would look at those particular scenarios, and I'm like, Jesus walked around with the guy that set him up to get killed.
Oh, ooh, you finna step on some toes.
But, but this is how I'm thinking. Like
Yeah.
that person stayed in his life in his circle until he was about to die. So he knew that he was going to kill him, but he kept him in his circle. He had his last supper with him. So if we think like how Jesus would think, it's not necessarily we get rid of people. Everybody has a purpose in our life. So
Yeah.
we have to figure out what that purpose is and make sure that we walk in according to that path. Like the last thing that Jesus said on the cross is what? Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they do.
Yeah. So have you been able to forgive those around you?
Absolutely.
How did you do that?
How did I do that?
Yeah.
Stop saying those stories.
Ooh, what were your stories?
Whatever those stories are for whatever that person. Everybody has a story that you always replay of someone that did you wrong.
Mm,
And I stopped replaying those stories because your body doesn't understand that it's not happening in real time. It's something in the past. Your body reacts to it, just like PTSD. So I stopped saying those stories, and I got to look at the person like, wow, this person really doesn't know what they're doing. If they really sat down and thought about that, they're doing this to a stroke survivor, someone that barely has nothing to have for his life, they wouldn't be really doing it. So obviously something is wrong with them. They have some type of issue that they're going through. So I have to forgive them.
and it's not personal.
It's not personal. It's never personal. It's never personal. Trust me. It's something that's for your good or for their good. but you don't know because 3 or 4 years from now, you're like, man, that was the messed up time I was living. But right now, I'm so happy that happened for me.
So when you start growing, because you can't control the growth of other people, right? You can't control
Correct.
their process. You can
Correct.
accept them for who they are, and you can determine how you will interact with that person.
Yep.
But for yourself, I think the key to growing when you are going through adversity is figuring out what exactly do you need to grow, like recognizing like this is an opportunity for me to grow, or almost demanding you to grow, right? When you hit adversity, it's like a demand, like, okay, stop, you got to grow, and figuring out what that is that you need to do. And it's almost like you have to let go of your ego, because when you
Mm,
talk about what people are doing to you, what happened to you, it's like your ego saying, this should not have happened to me, which may be true, right? No one wishes stroke on anyone, right? No one wishes adversity. Well, some people wish adversity, but no good person wishes adversity. So it's almost like you got to check your ego and say, what do I need to get through this? And how am I going to supply myself with that? But you almost got to check your ego at the door, or you're never going to grow.
absolutely. I agree with that. Absolutely agree with that.
What did you have to check?
What did I have to check? It was my ego. It definitely was my ego. Um, but I learned very late in life that I couldn't help anybody. I really had to help myself.
Mm,
Like going on the airplane, you always hear when the stewardess say the instruction, put on your mask first before you put on anybody else's. You really had to help yourself. So I had to learn that just because the person didn't react the way that I reacted, it's because most likely they didn't have the same experiences I had in life to come to that conclusion for me to react that particular way. Their
mhm.
reactions is based off of their reactions, off their experiences. So I had to really sit down and say, you know what? Check my ego at the door. I don't know what they've been through. I don't know why they do the things that they do this their particular way. I can't get mad at it. I can give them my opinion, and that's about it. And don't get mad about it. But I used to get mad about it before. So once I did that, life was so much easier.
Yeah. No, when you say that, like, I mean, I've gone through the same thing, right? I got to sit and I got to take care of me and I got to grow. But my ego tells me I'm supposed to be perfect. That's my ego. You just called me a perfectionist 2 minutes ago.
I didn't say it live though.
You didn't say it live, but you just said it. I'm not ashamed, right? I'm real. Keep it real. But my ego tells me I need to be perfect, right? And I know for some males, their ego tells them they have to be providers,
Mm,
right? Our ego tells us these things that we have to meet. And when we can't meet those standards of what our ego is telling us, it's a hit. When I'm not perfect, I'm like, why am I here? I'm like,
That's self pain. That's the
yeah.
self pain that we put on inflict on ourselves. I like to call that the ego of the subconscious, and our
Mm,
subconscious doesn't really know anybody else exists except us. So
yeah.
what we say through our subconscious is law. So I have learned how to calm down my self-conscious by meditation. And when I meditate, my subconscious always does something to me to try to get me out of meditation to work on
Mhm.
myself. And I just tell it to, okay, I hear you, but right now I'm focusing on myself. I need 20 more minutes. Let me go. And then when I do that, I usually get whatever I need to get done. Like, have you ever noticed when you're trying to do something, really something for yourself, there's
Mhm.
always something that distracts you, that's trying to
Mhm.
pull you away from that?
Mhm. And I think I mentioned this before. I was listening to an Oprah podcast, and I think the guy wrote a book called The War of Art. And he talked about resistance. He said, anytime you're doing something that matters, you will be met with resistance in
Mm,
one form or another. And your job is to go through that resistance, to beat that resistance, to meet that resistance where it is and overcome it.
absolutely. And once you learn that, not necessarily like you always have to overcome it each and every time, but that you're aware of it. And a
Hmm.
lot of us see like we're trying to do things, and all of a sudden we just digress and go into five different other things, and we don't even realize why we did that. But once you
Mm.
realize that, oh, I was supposed to do this, I'm supposed to be focused over here. That's when you can actually practice to get resilient from whatever those distractions are coming at you. That you can say, okay, put it to the side. I can keep on moving. I could do what I have to do with this particular task I'm supposed to do for myself. But that's the first thing I think you need to do is just learn yourself, learn your distraction, learn your faults, and move forward.
So, people in the chat, people that are watching who haven't put in the chat yet, tell me what distraction comes up when you are trying to grow? What distraction comes up for you when you're trying to go? Me is sleep. Because I'm trying to figure it out and I get very tired. And so sleep will pop up to distract me. For some, it may be social media. What distracts you when you're trying to grow? All right. So, Greg, someone's going through adversity. They're trying to get through it right now. What's your first piece of advice? So, yeah.
The first thing that you need to do is be honest with yourself and don't blame other people for your problems. See what you actually have done to cause these issues. You might not have anything to do with it whatsoever, but do an analysis of that. Do a self-analysis and see why this is happening to me. Why is this constantly happening to me? You have some people that you know you seem like they're always lucky. They always find $20 on the floor, or they always win off from scratch offs. They just lucky. Like, why is that always happening to them but not happening to you? Well, maybe because your mindset is set to failure. Like, you wake up every morning like, oh, I'm ugly. Nobody's gonna like me. And you keep on saying that to yourself. So if you constantly giving yourself negative energy, how do you expect to have positive results?
And you'd be surprised when I talk to people through coaching, friends, whatever it may be, how many negative words we associate with ourselves. And a lot of times I tell people, stop. Would you talk to your child self like that? Would you talk to your friend like that? What are you saying about yourself? Are you saying you're lazy? Are you saying you're selfish? Are you saying, like, I'm not smart enough, I can't do it? Whatever it is, what are you telling yourself? Because what you're telling yourself usually, number one, is not true. Right? We say we lazy and we have like 2 jobs, 5 kids. I'm not saying people got 5 kids. I'm just saying you just got a lot of responsibility and you walking around like, well, I can't reach my goals because I'm lazy. No, you mislabeling yourself. So
Right.
sometimes you gotta come to a coach or sit down and think and say, gosh, what am I saying to myself? And is this really true? And that
Right.
will open the gates to you growing, because you'll realize you can't grow when you say you lazy, right? When you say you lazy, that's a judgmental term. It ain't nothing you can do with that. But if you say I'm tired and I'm overcommitted, we can work on that.
Right. Right. And that's what it is. It's all about mental state. If your mental state is in a negative, dark place, then you're going to have dark results. And if it's in a positive place, you're going to get positive results. It's like, say, for instance, you go to a restaurant and, you're having a bad day, but then you get this waiter that's just so bubbly. You're like, and you just ready, like, what's the specials? The specials are, and you're like, okay, I want to try that because you're feeding off of that person's energy. But if that person comes to you like, well, today our specials is meatloaf, you don't want anything from that restaurant. You want to walk out of there because you're feeling that person's energy, and that's getting the same results each and every time because that's how they perceive life. So there's the same thing with us. We have to be able to perceive life in a positive aspect. If you want to get rid of those adversity that you have, got to remember, I don't care what you are or who you are, you're always going to have adversities in your life. There's always going to be things that's going to try to slow you down. So you just can't think about, okay, I got rid of this one and now life is perfect. That is not going to happen. This is a race. This is a journey and not a race. So once we get the mindset of being conscious of things that happen to us and our triggers and understanding our triggers, then we can move forward. But if we don't understand what our triggers are, then we can't do anything to move forward. And I can't help you. You can't help yourself. Nothing can happen. You have to understand your trauma.
Greg, do you think, um, like for me, I'll have rituals, right? So depending on how bad a day it is, right? If I'm having a bad day, I may say my mantra of this is just my day, this is not my life, to bring me back in perspective. If I come across something that's really hard at work, don't tell my manager. I may just walk outside and walk around the block, right? Do you think it's good to know those things that can recenter you so that you can have your moment, and then you can have your kind of down moment, because I feel like you're gonna have it, like you're like, ugh. But then you find the ways to recenter you and you identify those. So when you realize, all right, I'm at a block right here, I'm facing some adversity, and this may be smaller adversities, right? I'm facing something. Okay, what do I need to do to get to change my mindset? Because before we can really start taking action, we really do have to work on our brain.
Yeah, I think you have to have, I guess, rituals, whatever it is that you actually have. Uh, in order for you to have your life, just like when you get in your car, you just don't get in your car and drive. There's certain things that you just have to do, you're supposed to do to actually drive your car properly. And some people just don't do those things. Like you're supposed to check your tires, you're supposed to check your mirrors, you're supposed to make sure that everything is right in your car, and then you could drive forward. Then all of a sudden, if something does happen, you're like, oh, I know that this wheel is a little bit off, so I could prepare myself for that. But if you don't have no clue for that, you might get yourself into an accident. So yes, you need to do those pre-checks daily, maybe hourly, or whenever you have, not even when you have those situations comes up, before those situations up, because you could actually do a proper triage of yourself and you know what's going to happen in the future. So when that does happen, boom, you're ready for it.
Let me say this. I like what you just said because every day I get in my car, I don't check nothing, right? And we do that. I don't check. I get in, I'm like, oh, the gas is on E. Okay. Right. And so I think you're right. Like we do that in life. We go about life as if everything's okay. We don't check it. And then when that little gas light come on, we like, what? I don't drove that far. What's going on? And then we panic because I may not make it to the gas station, right?
Right,
And so
right.
same thing in life. We're not checking in, right? We're not checking in. And so we're just going on autopilot. Autopilot, we had no oil change. Our tires don't have no tread. And we just going through life on autopilot. And I think you're right, because when you get to that moment of adversity, especially when it's prolonged or when it's severe, you don't have anything to kind of support you in that.
And to even back up that adversity thing, like what I do to help people out, and I'm kind of a jerk with it. I've probably done it to you a
Oh
couple of
God.
times too in the past. I
Yeah.
basically just tell people like, okay, why are you telling me this for? What is that
You
doing for
have
you?
done that to me.
Yeah, you're like, but if you really sit down and think about it, because a lot of people will have those stories and issues and they will be stuck for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm like, what did that do for you?
Mm, good point. Because here's the thing I've learned is when we tell ourselves stories, or sometimes when we get stuck, or when we're not doing things we know we should be doing, how is that serving you? Because it is serving you, right? And you think it's not serving you in the way you want, right? You're not growing, but it is serving you. Like it may be making you feel better about yourself because if I keep telling myself how they did me wrong, I don't have to face what I need to fix about myself, right? So it may be doing that. It could be just avoiding like real conversation or real issues again, so I don't have to face my own stuff. I don't have to cry. That story could be serving you, and understanding how it's serving you can help you move past it.
That's what I'm talking about. Learning what that story is doing for you, learning what that trauma is. And once you figure that out, I'm telling you, life is great. That's why, with me, I don't have the things I had before, but I have so much more that I never
Mm.
had before because of my ego, because of what I accomplished in life, how much money I had. I thought I had everything I needed. But once I lost everything, that's when I became truly alive. Somebody, you have a question here.
No, I'm looking at the comments. We're behind.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Amazing Grace. Not forgiving someone hurts you, not the person you hurt. They've moved on and you still mad. That is true, right? But sometimes if you rub it in their face, you can make them mad again. Just just
But why would you want to do that? Who
I'm just,
cares?
I mean, I'm just being honest, but it is true, right? Once you disconnect yourself from it emotionally, and the way to truly realize that you've moved on or someone else has moved on is how you emotionally react. That's when you know you have grown, right? So you ever I had somebody throw something, somebody real close to me, throw something in my face, and it was supposed to hurt my feelings. And I was so freaking proud of myself because I was like, and And once you get to that point where you're like, so you did this, like this was what you did, and you can say, and okay, yeah, that's when you know you've grown because you've healed from it. You don't feel the need to defend it. You don't feel the need to like fight them about it or get in their face or even engage at all. You're like, if all you see in me is my struggle and you can't see, especially what I went through, I was freaking homeless. So all you can see is that part of my struggle. You can't see all this progress I made. Then I'm gonna leave you stuck back there. You can still look at it. Fine, have fun, have a party, drink to it. Let's cheers.
But
Because you can look at it in shame, and I can look at it as growth and like a testimony, right?
I look at it at a completely different angle because those are two angles that you're looking at. I'm looking at a third angle here that
What is it?
I didn't look at before.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of people that have mental illness. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different illnesses out there. Some people are narcissists. Some people are
Mm-hmm.
bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I had my stroke and I went to this stroke support group, and I was going, through a divorce at that particular time, and this lady said to me, "says Gregory, forgive her." I'm like, "You don't even know what happened. Forgive her. You don't know what she's gone through. Nobody has taught her how to deal with a stroke survivor. When you get married, they just say for sickness and in health, and that's it. That's the only time you hear about sickness. So there was no consultant for her to actually move forward to actually be a wife of a stroke survivor. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
forgive her. So I don't know what the person's mind state is. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind whenever I see someone coming at me that
Mm-hmm.
that, that don't understand what I'm going through, my pain, that
Mm-hmm.
they try to patronize me. I like, okay, I need to forgive them and move forward, period. Because they have some things that they're dealing with. And I'm not strong enough nor intelligent enough or educated enough to actually deal with their problems because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to therapy plenty of times. And whenever I go to therapy, I come up with these grand stories, Joy. They come with these great stories. They're like, blah, 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 blah. And then they say to me, okay, Greg, but how did you feel? Like they didn't care about the story. They wanted to know what the root problem was. And I was like, wow, why do I keep on saying these stories? Why do I keep on thinking that people will care about my story? It's
Mm-hmm.
about how I react to it. So yes, great that you react to it in the perfect way, that you grow for it. But more importantly is to understand whenever that situation comes up, it's not about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Miss Jerry said that takes this one. This was a while ago, so let me keep reading. Being able to check yourself in an honest way. Oh, and it hurt. Oh, it take discipline. It take and dedication. You're right. It is easy to tell yourself you're right and everyone else is wrong. This you easily continue. I think that's supposed to be thus you easily continue whatever behavior you were trying to break free from. That is so true. Because I love to say how people wrong, but I check myself. I start off with they wrong, and then I end up with how I'm wrong. But I'm just being for real, right? Like in real life, we start off like, come on now. You start off with this person was wrong. And then it take me some analysis and I have, and I get to there. But you're right. It takes a lot to be like, okay, I was wrong. I think I was on the phone with a friend yesterday, maybe. And what did I say? It was something like, it was like, yeah, maybe I would say like I was selfish back in the day because I'm very honest. Like, man, I was like, talk about vengeance was mine. When I was in my 20s, if you mess with me, vengeance was mine. And I was like, but I've grown from that. I'm not like that anymore. And it's like, wow, I'm surprised you admitted that. Yeah, I know myself.
But that's good. It's growth. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And people look different when they grow
Do they?
spiritually.
Oh, I was gonna say because I just look old. Um, self doubt, Amazing Grace. Self doubt always distracts you. I think self doubt may be the number one distractor in the world.
That's that subconscious. That's what I was talking about. You
Yeah,
got to tell that subconscious to chill out. It's time to grow. And once you
yeah.
recognize that, then you can move forward.
Yeah. All right, Jerry, that type of behavior and attitude towards yourself comes from someone saying it first. The mind starts to overthink that comment, and then you start to believe that is so true. Self sabotage. A lot of times, which hinders you from growing sometimes. A lot of times, if you talk to people about how they feel about themselves, you'll learn that it goes back to their childhood, right? And what their parents said to them and what they instilled in them, because that has a lot to do it. Like, and then you go to the teenage years and it's kind of like you're listening to your peers. So I can remember my mama calling me husky for a long time. Then I remember middle school and being called like five head and mustache, right? So you those those things stick with you. It really does stick with you, and you have to be conscious of which ones have stuck with you and when they pop up. What's
Mm.
that look for, Greg?
No, I'm trying to figure out, like, when you have those particular things that I guess you figure it out, like, what kind of coping mechanism did you use to actually get over those things when they've been said to you?
That's a good question. I think realizing that, like with me, my mom was very interesting, I'll say. But for her, realizing that her own life story impacted the way she talked to me. Because as soon as you go to my grandmama's house, she'd be like, "Ooh, you got a lot of hips." So as soon as you go there, you realize, oh, my mom has this fixation with weight that she's putting on a fifth grader. Right? Like, it's like, okay. And so it took me maybe in my 20s to realize that, but it's almost like subconscious. I'll hear other people now and I can identify their voices. And I used to do things too, like I'm strange, so I do weird things to cope. So I would have what I call high confidence days, which for me was working on my confidence, and I would wear my hair in a ponytail and it would show my forehead. And it's literally, I did it when I was grown because I heard so much about my forehead as a kid that now, in order for me to say, today is my high confidence day, I'm showing my forehead. And it was a thing for a while. So I think you just got to identify what those voices are, recognize when they're popping up, and then being like, okay, that's not me, right? That don't have nothing to do with me. That has something to do with them.
But that's actually, I'm proud of you, because that is a healthy coping
Mhm.
mechanism. A lot of people go to drinking or smoking or sex
I don't do.
to actually cope with those particular traumas that they have in their childhood. Like for me, I used to smoke cigars every day. Even after I had my stroke, I used to smoke every day. But
Oh
then I
wow.
had to realize, like, oh, people tell me, stop smoking, stop smoking, stop. I'm like, I love to stop smoking, but I don't know how to. But once I figured out, oh, I'm coping for something.
Hmm.
And once I figured that out, then it was easier for me to stop cold turkey. And I haven't smoked in about a year. But until I figured that part out, I couldn't stop smoking.
No, yeah. My unhealthy one would be ice cream. And so for the last 2 years or so, I still eat ice cream, but I try not to automatically eat ice cream when I'm emotional. It's so much my coping mechanism that my boss, my manager will send me ice cream when I'm stressed. She'll have it delivered to my door, but she doesn't know. Like, I've been like, okay, the ultimate feat of self control is to be like, okay, I'm gonna go take a walk instead.
Right.
Um, but yeah. All right, we're going to read this last comment and then we have to go. Self affirmation, no matter what others say, helped me. Yes, I had to tell myself daily, yes, I am the ish. Yes, ma'am. Over time, I began to believe it. Same way a person can slowly believe the negative comments people tell them, they can slowly believe the positive affirmation. And also, when someone gives you a compliment and they give you a positive affirmation for someone else, being able to accept it and absorb it, because we often neglect to do that as well. All right, Greg, what's your last comment? What you gonna close us out with?
Yeah, that is great stuff. Your audience is pretty cool,
They're
and
so
I agree with you too. But once again, that's the trauma that we have from children. Like, why is someone being nice to me, giving me great compliments? We have to figure out all those traumas that we have in order for us to grow.
yeah.
And this is not a race. This is a journey. So there's going to be other pitfalls that we're going to have within our life. It's just we got to prepare ourselves. Just like how we start our car each and every day. Just don't jump in and drive. Check your car out. Make sure everything is right. Make sure all the air is in the tire. Then go. And
All
life will get
right.
over.
Greg, I literally have 2 minutes. So check out Greg in all the places. Give us a little synopsis of what you do while I put your info in the chat.
Well, I do a couple of things. I do lives on Instagram, mostly on Thursday night at 8 p.m. And I just basically talk with my audience. I let the stroke survivors, people with brain traumas, and their caregivers to get on and talk about different adversities that they're having in their lives. I also do once a month around the 24th. I do a caregiver package giveaway on Instagram. Each and every month, I get a caregiver from the United States that actually is a caregiver for a stroke survivor or AVM survivor and give them something so they could be appreciated. And I just have these things on Instagram, YouTube, and also LinkedIn. You can see all my information there. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. If you have any questions for me, direct message me. I'm available. I'll talk to you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Come back anytime. And
Thank
other
you.
than that, we got to go. Peace
Have a
out.
great day.
Bye.